Peace, Afro-Punk. My name is Jesse Williams. I want to welcome everyone to Activism Row, and thank you for joining Ben and Jerry's Solution Sessions, which are powered by our grassroots organizers, including one of my favorite national movement leaders, Advancement Project National Office. Now, if you're here, that means you're ready. It means you're ready to hear about winning strategies for transforming our criminal legal system. And while this year has reminded us over and over again that this current criminal legal system, from police, whether you're talking about prosecutors or prisons, all of it is unjust, clearly. We have also seen measurable progress. We've seen that through our sheer determination, the sheer determination that you see in our communities every day. So today we're going to dig into some community strategies, and you will leave this session with a roadmap for plotting the course for real safety and justice for Black and Brown communities, wherever you call home. Like many of you, these issues are close to me. As a Black man, as a father, as a brother, as a person, and as a board member of Advancement Project. Now, as a board member, I've been able to support efforts to end structural racism around the country. I've seen firsthand that we can and will transform these systems that oppress our communities, especially when we build power together, when we challenge the system, and when we shift narratives. Our power, when organized, allows us to pressure policymakers directly to create change that we want to see in our communities. While so much wrong has happened this year, obviously 2020, damn. Our communities are fighting back. Our communities are winning. Don't lose sight of that. We have won challenges to end cash bail. We've won challenges to cut police budgets. We've won challenges for elected progressive prosecutors. We've eliminated police from schools in some places. We are flexing our muscle and our power. It is an exciting time. The dynamic groups that are here today are showing us what is possible and how our communities can feel empowered to change the status quo on their own. Don't forget that part. And it all falls under the vision of free and safe communities of color, which is a campaign led by Advancement Project National Office. Now, this campaign works as a thought partner, as the lawyers for transformative community-led change that recognizes the humanity and dignity of people of color. The fact that we have to fight for that is obviously absurd. Today, you will hear stories of success that help us get to Election Day and get to the days that follow. It is these very victories that will carry us beyond the moment that we are in, all the way to the year 2045, when people of color are going to make up the majority population in the U.S. The majority. JUDITH Brown DIANIS, my friend, my mentor, and executive director of Advancement Project National Office, is going to lead us in a conversation with a few of the organization's grassroots partners, who, with the support of Advancement Project and Ben & Jerry's, have not only reimagined our safety, but have also made their vision a reality for entire cities. All right? Imagine the work required to get that done. But first, though, I want you to write down a few things. All right? Just have this ready for when we walk out of here. I'm going to give you a couple hashtags. First, free and safe. Okay? Second, hashtag close the workhouse. Critical, and we'll elaborate on that term later. And last one, hashtag police free schools. Something we've been working very hard on, especially in recent years. All right? So we want to make sure to amplify the movement work that these organizations have spearheaded. We want to spread the word. We got close the workhouse. We have hashtag police free schools, hashtag free and safe. All right. All right, Judith, let's get into this.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm really excited to be here. My name is JUDITH Brown DIANIS again, and I am the executive director of the National Office of Advancement Project. And I'm glad to be here with Afro-Punk. Thanks for inviting us. This is my first Afro-Punk. Oh, and I'm in a box virtually. And I also want to thank our friends at Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream for having this important discussion today. So first, I'm going to go around before we even jump in and I frame up the conversation, because I want the people on the screen to introduce themselves. I'm really honored to be here with them, because these are people who are making change in our country. So I will kick it to James to introduce himself.
Hey y'all, my name is James Lopez. I'm the executive director of Power Youth Center for Social Change. We're an organization based in Miami, Florida.
Hi, everyone. My name is INEZ Bordeaux. I am Manager of Community Collaborations at Arch City Defenders and an organizer with the Close the Workhouse campaign here in St. Louis.
Hey everyone, Maria Fernandez here. I also work at the Advancement Project. I use she, her pronouns, and I get the honor to work with young people and youth organizing groups like Power You around police free schools.
How y'all doing? My name is Jay. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am the abolitionist organizer for Action St. Louis, a racial justice organization here in St. Louis.
Thanks all of you for being here to be part of this discussion. So today we're going to jump into a conversation about winning strategies to undo mass incarceration, to undo structural racism, strategies that are working towards getting us all free. And I'm really excited about it because the people that I'm in conversation with today are people who are on the front lines of making change. And I think it's important that we place this conversation in context, right? Because we are in a moment, I mean, 2020 has given us a lot. And it has given us the ups and downs. It's given us a pandemic. It's given us um, several issues around state violence and the killing of Black women and men. And it's given us, or it's going to give us, an election. And so this is an important moment that we're in, especially for Black people, because we're also, our community is in despair. We are disproportionately impacted by COVID, and we are not only the health implications, but the economic implications for our people, and the isolation that we're facing. And so these are rough times. And in the midst of these rough times, one of the things that is a silver lining is that we're also winning some things. We're winning some things for our people. And that is the discussion that we're going to have today. And before we have that discussion, I want to first ask each of the panelists, like, what is bringing you joy right now? Because I think in every one of these conversations, we need to check in with each other to see how we're doing. And so I'm gonna start with Inez. What is bringing you joy?
Um, what is bringing me joy is really seeing Black folks in and around St. Louis, like knee deep in the work of this idea of re envisioning public safety. Seeing that people are not only like understanding the concepts, but actively working toward this idea of re envisioning public safety, investing in the things that actually make Black people and our communities safer is a thing that brings me
Mhm.
joy. Seeing people get involved in the work really makes me happy.
James, what's bringing you joy right now?
Yeah, I think for me, given the state of the world and all the bad news that we get, it's my community's ability to still talk shit, make memes, crack jokes, um,
Mhm.
in the midst of all of it really just keeps giving me joy.
I get that. Look, I may be old, but I'm on TikTok. Okay, like I be late at night. I be like scrolling through because let me tell you, Black people are so damn creative, right? Let's be real. And so, like, I get my, literally during the pandemic, I signed up for TikTok, and because I couldn't sleep, and I was trying to figure out like how do I get to sleep. So I'd be seeing little hours of fun on TikTok. So y'all keep that TikTok working because I need that joy. Jay, what is bringing you joy?
I've been eating a lot of really good food lately. That's bringing me a lot of
Mm.
joy and
Like
family
what?
time.
What's on that food
Yesterday,
list?
so yesterday I ate Sweetheart, which is this like Black vegan
Mm.
bakery, also restaurant. And I had these like crispy chicken, cauliflower
Mm.
chicken. It tastes like real chicken to me. Um,
I'd like to be the judge of that. I'm just joking.
yeah.
Maria, what's bringing you joy right now?
I think for me, what's bringing me joy is just to see the bold organizing that's happening with young people across the country, the risks that they're taking, the demands that they're making. It's so incredible. And on a personal level, I live with two teenagers. Well, not anymore because she's 21, but they were supposed to be away for school, and then they had to come back. So we're kind of doing a dorm situation in the house. So they call their rooms their dorm rooms. They've labeled them dorm one, dorm two. They have labeled the living room, the student union. The kitchen is the caf. And we've
That's
just been joking
hilarious.
so much. And I know that they're
Oh.
hurting because they really wanted this is Zaria's last year in school, so she really wanted to finish the year off strong, and, but we're just trying to create as much joy around them being home as possible.
Well, as Maria knows, I just dropped my daughter off at college. She's at University of New Orleans. She's going to be playing D1 basketball, so that brings me joy. But I spent 2 weeks down in New Orleans moving her in. I needed transition so that I could be ready for coming home to an empty house. And but what brought me joy was the etouffee and the beignets, all of that. So what's going to bring me joy when I get back home finally is going to be working out to get that off. But so let's get into this conversation. So for those who don't know, Advancement Project, we're a national racial justice organization. We work with grassroots movements to dismantle structural racism and white supremacy. And one of the great joys of my career is working with grassroots organizations like those who are represented here in this conversation. And what we do is we bring legal communications and campaign support to grassroots organizations to get sustainable change. And at the heart of our work is building power. I'm a lawyer, but I know that the law is actually an obstruction to power. And so we try to think differently about how to use these tactics for winning campaigns. And so I want to let's start big and then go down, right? And because there's a question right now on the table that a lot of people have around abolition. And what's interesting is in this moment, I think as somebody who's like the elder, and I don't want to be called the elder, the auntie this on this panel, I think that the moment that we're in, one of the things that brings me hope in this moment is that the demands are much more radical than they have been, right? And that the idea of abolition is not like wacky right now, right? Like it is actually like people are speaking it now. But they may mean something different about it. Defund, right? People may mean something different about it. And so I want to first start there, like abolition versus defund versus reform, right? Let's talk a little bit to level set for people around what those things mean, right? So let's see. Let's start. Maria, why don't you kick us off a little bit with your thinking about these, and then we'll bring in other folks.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the question of the moment. It's what is abolition? Why abolition? How does defund relate to abolition? And I think something that for us in the national campaign for police-free schools, we're really grounded in the belief that we have to seed abolition at all spaces and places. And for us, we believe that removing police from schools is a seed to removing police from our communities. And when we're talking about abolition, we're really talking about the full spectrum of policing mass incarceration. So that includes removing police from our schools, communities, institutions. It's about dismantling a system that's built on imprisonment capitalism, right? That's built off the bodies of Black people. And it's also eliminating and dismantling what happens after, right? So we're talking about probation, we're talking about surveillance, and really building an alternative that does not throw our people away, building an alternative that generates real safety for our communities, and building an alternative where it's not based on punishment, that it's based on healing. For all people in our communities. So, really, the question right now around defund the police is that defund towards what? And it's defund towards abolition, defund as a means for abolition.
So Inez, I see you sitting there with that defund. defund t-shirt on, so it's a defund the police. Right? So why don't you add on, is defund the police, is that what you mean when you say defund, is towards abolition, or is it just cut that budget and use the money someplace else?
Oh no, it's definitely defund as a means toward abolition. Defunding the police is really just the first step. The thing that I find really funny is that, like, the Close the Workhouse campaign has been saying, like, it's time to re envision public safety. It's time to, divest from the carceral state and invest in Black people and communities. And that's just a long, fancy way of saying defund the police. Um, and we're just kind of in this moment where when we say, let's re-envision public safety, and people are like, yeah, let's re-envision public safety. And then you say, well, we're gonna re-envision public safety by defunding the police. And they're like, what? Wait, what does that mean? And so for a long time, we were very careful about not saying the A word, not saying abolition, because it has all these connotations to it. And it's such a difficult concept to really discuss and implement. So we just said re-envisioning public safety instead. And so, yes, that is a very long answer for yes. We mean defund the police as a means to abolition. And we've really spent a lot of time in St. Louis just talking about what re-envisioning public safety means, what abolition means, and what abolition looks like. I think um, a lot of times people don't understand exactly what abolition looks like. I've spent a lot of time talking to the West counties and the Chesterfields and the Ladouxs and the Frontenacs, the wealthier neighborhoods in and around St. Louis. And when I talk to them and I say, when we talk about abolition, we are talking about achieving a lifestyle for everyone that you are already living. There are no police in your schools. There are no cops driving through your neighborhoods, terrorizing the community members. There are no police when you go into your grocery stores or your gas stations. And that's what abolition means. It means,
Right.
like, people and communities being free of that oppressive force that seems to be omnipresent in our communities, but your communities are not treated that same way. So yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
defunding as a on the path to abolition.
Yeah, and I think some of those people you're talking about, especially some white folks and wealthy folks, like they're like, abolish the police. You can't do that, because for them, the police are there to protect them from us, right? Like they understand the importance of police as a mechanism and tool of social control, and so it's a scary idea for them to think about. Well, what would we do if there were no police? How would we make sure that we're safe from you all, right? So like it's a scary concept to them. And so James, so you know, add into this, like this mix, because also, like, we do need to recognize that there are a lot of Black folks, right, who are like, abolition, are we really ready for that? So what do you think? Are we ready for that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation in the state of Florida where, the right is very clear that if you say they're using the defund talking point as a way to scare everybody into thinking we're all communists who are trying to be authoritative. And that's just part of the water that we swim down here. What I will say, in addition to what folks have already added around what abolition means and how I think about it in terms of the difference between reform or abolition or defund, really is all in the context of how are we reorganizing or how are we making steps towards reorganizing society to prioritize just everyday people's needs over punishment. And I think the way we've kind of entered it, especially from the school perspective, because we're in a city where Parkland happened right up the street, and people are like, well, I don't know, maybe people are crazy. We need to have police in schools. But then when you begin to explain to them that, would you rather have a police officer in a school versus a nurse versus a mental health counselor versus a librarian, even if someone is not agreement with defund, they're like, all right, I think we need to have police, but we should have librarians, right? We should have, and what they
Mhm.
don't realize is that's a kind of a gateway conversation for us to say, actually, schools are a microcosm of what's happening in our neighborhoods. And for generations, we have not received resources, we have not received supports that we need to be and reach our full potential. And as a consequence, the state just says, oh, we're just going to send police into these neighborhoods to control folks. So
Mhm.
if we reframe it around how are we organizing society to meet everybody's needs, the need for police is no longer necessary. I mean, I think it just starts with people just realizing that so much of what's happening in our neighborhoods, conversations around crime, isn't because there's bad people or folks wasn't raised well. It's because all there are police in our neighborhoods, and then all the actual services, supports, resources that anyone would need to have a meaningful life are being divested from our neighborhoods.
So Jay, do you feel like the conversation around abolition is taking some ground and finding some hold in St. Louis, right? Because I mean, it's important. Like St. Louis is a really important place. We know, right, from the Ferguson uprising to all of the work that you all have been doing since Mike Brown was murdered. Uh, and kind of the push and pulls of like white folks like, hold on now, don't go too crazy down here. So do you think like abolition, a conversation around abolition is starting to get some traction in St. Louis?
Definitely. Um, I think that right now we have this national outcry for defund, while also like on people on the streets are chanting defund the police. When it used to be super radical to say Black Lives Matter, now like that's not radical. We need you to say defund the police. We need you to say abolish the police, right? That's radical now for folks. But folks are catching on to it. Um, when I think about abolition, I like to think about what we can build. I like to think about it as a means of abundance.
Mm.
And I think that this outcry to defund the police is really about like, what can we build? Like, what can we take away and strip from these oppressive systems, take away and strip from the police and jails, and really build up for Black communities. Um, yeah.
So I love that, Jay, and that's gonna move us into our next conversation around what can we build, because this is a time to like think about radical transformation of these systems, and we have an opening where we're seeing mass mobilization. This country has never seen mass mobilization like at this extent, like week after week, day after day, everywhere across the country, where the call is a much more radical vision. And so I want to move into that because so you all, this isn't like some random panel discussion. we're here because we have worked together. Advancement Project has worked with Power U and with the Close the Workhouse campaign, supporting efforts to transform the criminal legal system, to invest in our communities instead of investing in criminalization. And so we have been honored to support that work and brought our friends at Ben and Jerry's in to support the work also. It's kind of weird, like, what are you gonna do with ice cream? Well, we figured out what to do with ice cream, right? And the folks at Ben and Jerry's really have taken some chances, right? That most corporations wouldn't take, going down this road and like talking about abolition and putting out like statements about white supremacy in ways that were pretty like, whoa, that's a company doing that. And so they've been a partner in, I was going to say partner in crime, but I won't say that. They've been a partner in this work with us. And so I want to talk some about, let's move to like these campaigns, because I think as much as we're in despair, we need to understand in our community that we are winning, that it's not just what we're seeing in the streets as the protests. Yes, that's important, but like there's been years of work that have led to this moment that we're in, right? Like it didn't just pop out, right, the sky, but that people have been doing this work, and we've been building the muscle and building the infrastructure to get wins that have actually made the moment possible, right, and made the moment more radical than it has been in the past. And so, I want to start to talk about the campaign. So, Advance Project was really honored to work with Close the Workhouse campaign in St. Louis. We provided legal support in the work that you all were doing, and some campaign and communication support to close a jail. And so I want to start, Inez, by asking, like, what, how did you all land on that being a campaign around closing a jail? So let's start there. How did you land on that as being the thing you wanted to work on?
Well, the workhouse in St. Louis has been around for about 150 years. People have been trying to close it really for generations at this point. This is not the first campaign to attempt to close the workhouse, but I think a turning point came in 2017 when Action St. Louis decided they were going to participate in the Black Mama bailout, where they crowdsourced bail money to bail Black women out of the workhouse and the other jail here in St. Louis in time for Mother's Day. And when they bailed those people out, they started hearing like these crazy horror stories. Now, these stories weren't new. Like, if you live in St. Louis, if you are Black in St. Louis, you either have been to the workhouse or you know someone who has been to the workhouse. So you've heard the stories about the conditions, about the lack of medical care, the water that smells funny, the black mold that grows on the walls, the rats and the roaches, and all of these different things. But something about the stories that were being shared in 2017 were just more horrific than usual. And then right after that, we had a historic heat wave in St. Louis. The workhouse does not have any air conditioning. So when it's 115 degrees outside in St. Louis, it's 125 degrees inside of the workhouse. And there were videos of people hanging out of windows, screaming and begging for help, waving shirts around, that really became a national story. So when that happened, the three organizations that make up the Close the Workhouse campaign now are City Defenders, Action St. Louis, the Bail Project, and an organization called MORE said, why don't we start this campaign to close this jail? And again, like I said, it wasn't the first campaign, but it was different this time because we tried to attack it from a different lens where there was organizing, yes, but there was also a legal component to the plan to close the jail, where we had a whole legal advocacy firm, Arch City Defenders, who was backing us up with, partners like Advancement Project to file conditions lawsuits and cash bail lawsuits to supplement the work that we were doing. And we really just spent the first year just educating people, trying to remind people that we've all been brainwashed into believing that if someone is in jail, they deserve whatever they get while they are there, that they are less than human, that they are unworthy, they are criminals, that if you can't do the time, then don't do the crime. So we really just spent that first year doing a lot of public education around humanizing the people that have been impacted by the workhouse. I am one of those people. I spent 30 days inside of the workhouse in 2016. So I also spent a lot of time sharing my personal story of how I ended up in that position. And then from there, the campaign just kind of continued to pick up steam and momentum. And we really talked about this idea of re envisioning public safety. Like, what happens if we take this $16 million and invest it in the people and communities that need it to prevent the things that were causing them to end up in the workhouse in the first place? We found through our work with the Bail Project, who really crunched the numbers, that the majority of the people that were in the workhouse were there for what we call crimes of poverty. They were literally only there because they were poor and couldn't afford to pay their bail, or they had committed crimes that are considered crimes of poverty. If you break into someone's car because you're poor and you steal a laptop, or you steal Pampers and formula from Walmart, or you bounce your rent check, or you didn't go to court and so you didn't go to court because you couldn't pay your fines, and then you couldn't afford to pay your fees, and you ended up in the workhouse. These are all things that
Right.
are crimes of poverty. And so
Right.
as we started explaining all of those things, people very much got on board with the campaign, and it took off from there.
Yeah. And if I remember, there were like more than 95% of the people that were in the jail were there because they couldn't afford cash bail, and that was one of the things for Advancement Project. Thomas Harvey, who leads our Justice Project, teaming up with Arch City Defenders and other organizations, bringing the lawsuit that would challenge cash bail, with the idea that the strategy of like, if we win that case, we empty the jail. If we empty the jail, then you can make, the organizing can then make the case for the fact that we don't need the jail, right? So,
Yeah,
Jay,
the
like you,
workhouse only exists in St. Louis because of cash bail. Without cash bail,
right,
there would be no workhouse. You're absolutely right. 95% of the people that are in the workhouse are only there because they're poor.
right,
That's it. That is it.
yeah. So, Jay, so you get to a point where the numbers of people are coming down on who the number of people in the jail, and so you all did win a historic victory recently, with getting your alderman to agree to close the workhouse. And so, so tell us, like, so how did we get there, right? Like, what were the other things that had to be done? I know it's talked about changing kind of like people's thinking about who's in jail and what they need. But like, how'd you get the alderman there?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been a 2.5 year journey. Um, we did constant one-on-ones with alders. We framed it as this means of being super progressive. Like, if you support this campaign, you are progressive. And really, like, this framing of getting folks elected. Um, we canvassed. We did ward targeting, where we knocked on doors in the wards where alders did not want to see the workhouse closed, but the community members wanted to see the workhouse closed. The people have always wanted to see the workhouse closed, especially in these Black neighborhoods, where we knocked doors and got folks to sign pledge cards, and really ask them what makes them feel safe, right? And it wasn't the workhouse. It's not police, right? It's things like Inez had mentioned before, like healthcare and education. Um, so yeah, many one-on-ones, knocking on doors, getting folks to call their alders, getting folks to bug the mayor, um, sending emails. We did phone banks every
Yeah.
week, a few times a week, and really powerful organizing, the people power, day in and day
Mhm.
out, for sure.
Yeah, and I
We
mean,
were
and
relentless.
yeah, y'all, and the thing is,
Yeah.
like, it's also important to understand like the context of, right, like, it wasn't like you all just popped out of the sky either, right? Like, this is coming like out of the murder of Mike Brown, this kind of like this, the uprising, right, was like a continued thing, right? There was a lot of movement building happening in St. Louis that allowed for the power to be built, and for you all to kind of like be able to push the aldermen so that they knew you're serious, right? Well, like, they really understood that they got to go toe to toe with the community and be accountable. And so that's an incredible win. Congratulations. Closing, I will say, a jail is a big thing because we know that Americans seem to be infatuated with jails and prisons. So I want to move to James just to talk about like the win in Miami. I mean, I think it's important for people just to talk a little bit about like the conditions in Miami. How are you, a youth organizing group? Some people think, oh, young people. And I'm talking about like not young, like y'all young, right? Like I'm talking about high school student young, right? Um, and like, oh, they don't have any power. But clearly, you all have shown in Miami that that is not the case.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for context, as folks may know, Florida is always viewed as this sort of potentially purple swing state, but really it's a big red state with a couple blue bubbles where all the black folks live for the most part. And Miami-Dade County is one of those bubbles, one of those clusters, super segregated county, but it is the fourth largest school district in the country. So our rationale we see when counties, school districts of this size implement something, it actually has ripple effects of what's possible throughout the nation. And our organization has been around for about 20 years. And even in a so-called blue place, we were always viewed as a radical organization. If you talk to people, I'm very close with them now, but if you went to an NAACP meeting 15 years ago and you said the school to prison pipeline, they would look at you like you crazy. Like, there's no school to prison pipeline here. Like, that was just kind of what we were working with. To now, where we're at now, where people recognize there is a school to prison pipeline, and they recognize that policing is just not a viable. It doesn't make any sense to have police in schools for any reason. And kind of how we enter is from the traditional sort of school to prison pipeline fights. A lot of our work was trying to end out of school suspensions and really just fighting for alternatives like restorative justice, ways that actually build the full development of students and not just forcing them out. And really, we entered this coming out of the moment after Trayvon Martin and the tragedy of Trayvon Martin that happened in our county. And we, alongside organizations like Dream Defenders, mobilized at the Capitol, that really sort of pushed forward a lot of our organizing now to where we're talking about getting police out of schools. And really, it was after the moment, after the Ferguson uprising, leadership like folks like Maria, Jonathan Stiff at the Alliance for Educational Justice, who made the connection that as this sort of national uprising was happening, there needed to be a connection to the school to prison pipeline fight, and that iteration was getting cops out of schools. So we've kind of taken leadership from that at a national level, at a local level. We've really been trying to build organizations that can actually fight for progressive changes, given where we're at locally. And what we've been doing for the past couple of years is our number one function as an organization is to develop and train working class Black and Brown youth in Dade County, because we understand that although we're in an unprecedented moment, that this is going to be a long-term struggle. And our thinking is that we're going to need strong organizations long-term, and we're not going to move anything if we don't have working class young people who are trained, who have organizing experience, leading that fight long-term. But that's a sort of sidebar. What I will say around our campaign is really what we do every single year is we try to get young people to organize their peers around the annual school board budget process, around participatory budgeting and participatory engagement. And through that, young people are training, in many cases, not only their peers, but teachers who don't know anything about the budget, about what's currently in the county budget, how much money is going to police and security and surveillance, and how much money is going to all the things that we need that we're not getting. And a lot of our work is mobilizations, having conversations with school board members, at least the ones who would listen to us, and young people not only telling their story, but actually grappling with what changes in the budget would need to happen in order for our schools to be the schools that we dream of. And last year, because of a lot of our work, the Miami-Dade School Board doubled the amount of mental health coordinators that are in their Department of Mental Health, sort of at the last hour of the budget meeting. And this is sort of, in Miami-Dade County, or in the state of Florida, there's not really a mental health department in schools the way there is here in the county. And because of the ability of young people to mobilize hundreds of folks to budget hearings, to do social media pushes, to have those conversations, there are more mental health specialists in the county, and we have a way to go, but that's kind of where we're starting right now.
Congratulations. Congratulations to Power You also, and to the young people that made that happen in Miami. Maria, I want to turn to you because at Advancement Project, we work with great partners like Power You and Close the Workhouse campaign, but we're also like working at this kind of national level, connecting the dots and weaving movement, as I call it. And one of those campaigns is Police Free Schools. And we've had some wins, right? Minneapolis, after George Floyd was killed, Minneapolis School Board voted to oust the police from schools. But then we saw a series of wins, like Madison, Wisconsin, Freedom Inc. Yeah. Black Organizing Power in Oakland. Yeah. Coleman Advocates in San Francisco, Rochester. We've seen these wins. So talk about Police Free Schools. Like, why is the call for it? And how are we winning? Because we are winning.
It's my favorite thing to talk about, police-free schools. So I think you're right. Most folks who are looking at police-free schools, looking at the organizing around removing police from schools, and kind of thinking that it was just something that started in Minneapolis. And I think what's important for us is to ground that the fight around dismantling and ending the school to prison pipeline, the fight around policing and removing police from our schools has been decades in the making. I think we always like to look at the Black Organizing Project in Oakland, who really were one of the first in this iteration of the fight in 2011 to demand the removal of police from schools and the elimination of the Oakland Unified School Police Department after Raheem Brown, a young man, a teenager who was killed at the hands of a school police sergeant. And I think we have to recognize and center the leadership of Black young people, Black families, immigrant young people, brown students who have been really leading the fight and the charge to eliminate police from schools. So at Advancement Project, as James mentioned, we've been working with the Alliance for Educational Justice for the last several years. I'm going to say like 5 years after the assault at Spring Valley, where we saw a white police officer flip and throw a Black girl from her desk in Columbia, South Carolina. And the whole country was like, oh my God, what's going on? Why are cops doing this? Why are cops in schools in the first place? And it was really a call to action that was led by young people who were saying, this is enough. And it was Nia Kenny's bravery in recording the assault and making it public that really sparked a movement that brought these organizations together, who for the last several years have been building together, learning from each other, sharing strategies, and developing a national campaign that I think this moment is calling for. So we've been really blessed to be in relationship with groups across the country, to be able to define what police-free schools is. I think oftentimes people think about it as just eliminating the contract, but policing works differently in all school districts. Some school districts have their own police department, like Oakland had, like Los Angeles has, right? They have the largest police department. Some districts have contracts, some districts have a combination of all of those things. So for us, it was important in this moment to define what police-free schools is, right? So it's about dismantling school policing practice, culture, and infrastructure, that it's about ending the militarization and surveillance of young people. And it's about building a liberatory education system for us, that it's not just enough to remove the cops from our schools, but we actually have to develop the schools that we want to live in that reflect the society that we want to live in. So that's for us why Police Free Schools is grounded in abolition, because we believe in a world without police. in a world without prisons, and it could start in our schools. And we're winning. We're winning in Denver, in San Francisco, in Oakland, in Madison, Minneapolis, and we have incredible fights in Chicago, in New York, in New Orleans. There was a campaign that was just launched yesterday in Baltimore, right, in Miami. And I think it feels important to say that the campaign for police-free schools, it absolutely is about shifting the power of police, shrinking the power of police, divesting from police budgets, and investing in all the things that we know work and can generate real safety for young people. And when you ask them what they want, when you ask young people what is safety, you can guarantee you will get a whole list of things, and it does not include police. So we're really excited. I think this moment that we're in has catapulted the campaign, but it absolutely has been decades in the making.
So I want to just thank you all because we just touched the surface, good conversation. But things to take away is we're winning, right? They may seem bad things. I mean, things are bad. Okay. I'm not going to lie, but we are doing some things. And this is the work that we have towards our liberation as a people. And we got to dig in. And clearly, there are some threads around building power, that building power locally, connecting nationally is important. Partnerships are important, being able to dig in, but also to be clear on what we want, right? And being able to dream about something. Part of the problem with like white supremacy is white supremacy tried to just dash all of our dreams and our ability to imagine a different way of living in this country. And so I want to thank you all for being visionaries, for dreaming, for imagining something different, and for working towards it. And I want to thank Ben and Jerry for being partners on this journey with us. And to Afropunk, thank you so much for this conversation. There will be more in the community workshops where we're going to dig in and you can have deeper conversations about these campaigns. But thank you for joining us.